Today our story is about Joshua. It's found in the book of Joshua, chapter 1 through 6. Now Moses had been the leader of God's people for a long time. Now it was time for a new leader. Joshua was God's choice, and he would be the one to lead God's people into the promised land. Now God's people were camped just outside of Canaan, and Joshua knew they needed to conquer Jericho before they could live in Canaan. Joshua also knew God would help them. Now Joshua sent 2 spies to Jericho, and he wanted them to bring him news about the city and the people who lived there. Now the 2 spies went into Jericho, and they knew they must be very careful. If anyone found out they were there, they would be in great danger. They hid in the house that belonged to a woman named Rahab, but the spies did not know that someone had seen them sneak into the house. That person ran to tell the king about them, and right away the king sent soldiers to Rahab's house, and the soldiers told her to send out the spies. Now Rahab was a very quick thinker, and she said, "There were 2 men here, but I did not know who they were, and they left before the gate around the city was closed for the night. I do not know where they went, but if you hurry, you might catch them." So the soldiers looked in her house and then went away. Now Rahab had hidden the spies on her roof. She ran up to them after the soldiers left the house and said, "We have heard of all the wonders your God has done. Since I have protected you from the king, will you promise to protect me and my family when you attack the city of Jericho?" Now the spies made a promise to Rahab, and when they came to take over the city, they would make sure she was safe. She would gather her family together inside her home, and as a signal to show where they were, Rahab would tie a red rope to the window. The spies went down a rope and went back to the safety of their camp. And then they told Joshua that the people of Jericho were afraid of them and their God, and Joshua knew this was good news. All right, so before God's people could enter the land of Canaan, they had to cross the river Jordan. Joshua knew they needed to trust God. He listened very carefully as God told him how to get the people across the river. Early the next morning, God's people packed up their camp, and they brought out the Ark of the Covenant, a very special gold chest that held the laws of God. The priests carried the ark, and when they arrived at the river Jordan, the priests who were carrying the Ark of the Covenant went first. As they stepped into the river, its waters parted, and there was a dry place for God's people to walk on to get to the other side. Now, as the leaders crossed the river, each one chose 1 stone from the middle of the river. Then they stacked them on the other side. Whenever they would look at the stones, they would remember how God had helped them. So as soon as everyone reached the other side, the river began to flow again, and when they were close to Jericho, Joshua looked up and saw someone standing in front of him. He asked, "Are you for or against us?" And the person said, "Neither. I am for God's army." So Joshua knew this was an angel from God, and he listened carefully to the angel. And the angel told him exactly how to fight the battle to take over the city of Jericho. So Joshua's army was to march around the wall 1 time for every 6 days. 7 priests would march in front of the army carrying trumpets, and they would carry the ark so everyone would know that God was with them. And on the 7th day, they were to march around the wall 6 times, and on the 7th time around, the priests were to blow their trumpets, and the entire army was to shout loudly. So Joshua did all these things just as God had told him. God's people circled the wall surrounding Jericho. The ark and the priests with the trumpets led the way, and they marched around the wall once each day for 6 days. On the 7th day, they marched around 7 times, and when they started their 7th trip around Jericho's wall, Joshua gave the signal. The priests began to blow mightily on the trumpets, and all the soldiers began to shout. The city's wall began to tremble, shake, and crumble. Then the wall came tumbling down. Everything happened just as God said it would, and when God helped Joshua lead the army of God's people to victory over the city of Jericho, They also kept their promise to Rahab. She and all her family were safe, and Joshua was glad that he had listened to God. Well, I hope you enjoyed that story about Joshua, and remember to check out your Bible at home and find the story that you can read with your family. Have a great day.